Bowman Gray Stadium. They don't call it the Madhouse for nothing. For 75 years, Bowman Gray's been putting on some of the craziest shows on wheels, sometimes without tires on said wheels. NASCAR itself also has a long history with the track and the city of Winston-Salem as a whole. Yes, that same Winston. After all, I should know. I do live here. Bowman Gray has no shortage of crazy stories to tell, but the one that I want to highlight the most comes from the end of the NASCAR Cup Series history at the famed quarter mile. From 1958 to 1971, the track hosted one NASCAR Cup Series race a year, the Myers Brothers 250, named for Billy and Bobby Myers, two of the greatest modified series drivers in the 1950s. If those names sound familiar to you, it might be because Bobby Myers was the father of NASCAR's most famous gas man, Chocolate Myers, from Dale Earnhardt's Flying Aces pit crew. And Billy's two grandsons, Burt Myers and Jason Myers, still run modifieds at the track every Saturday night, 7 whole decades later. That's the thing about Bowman Gray. It's a battleground for rivalries that have lasted for generations. Almost the entire town of Winston-Salem knows somebody who races at Bowman Gray, either personally or tangentially through your best friend's sister's cousin's husband. But getting back on topic, the 1971 Myers Brothers 250 is the main subject of this video. Now, a lot of people may already know the general gist of this story. Bobby Allison drove an illegal car, won the race, got his win taken away, and now it's the only race in NASCAR history without a winner, right? Well, it's not quite that simple. The fact of the matter is, in 1971, drivers did have the option to choose a smaller car from the Grand American division, a minor series somewhat similar to the Xfinity series of today, but meant primarily for pony cars like the AMC Javelin, Chevy Camaro, and Ford Mustang. The reason for this was due to the big three American manufacturers, Chevy, Ford, and Dodge, giving out significantly less sponsorship money to the NASCAR in the 71 season. The problem got so bad that most of the shorter tracks like Bowman Gray could barely afford to pay drivers their winnings, and many of these short tracks saw fields that only hosted about a dozen cars or more. To combat this, NASCAR came up with the solution. We'll expand the field by entering drivers from the Grand American division, and Cup drivers will have the option to drive their cars if they so please. Richard Petty was apparently furious that NASCAR would pull a cheap stunt like this, and tried to get multiple drivers to boycott the race. Many of the drivers were afraid that they'd get shown up by the tinier pony cars, and some of them even threatened to intentionally wreck them in the race. While everyone was busy losing their marbles about a handful of pony cars entering the Cup Series, Bobby Allison was quietly scheming to score a win. Bobby Allison typically drove the much bulkier Ford Galaxy in the Cup Series, but seeing as how Bowman Gray was the shortest paved track on the schedule, for this race he opted to drive a Mustang, as the shorter wheelbase and smaller engine actually gave him a significant handling advantage through the corners at the small quarter mile. Believe me, this same philosophy still applies today, especially in the lower divisions like street stock and stadium stock. Raw speed normally doesn't get you the win at Bowman Gray. Sometimes beat up old Pintangs that look like they should barely be drivable take the checkered flag because handling is just that much better. So contrary to popular belief, Bobby Allison's Mustang was not illegal on this day. He was just the only person smart enough to take advantage of it. Or maybe they were smart enough, but their pride wouldn't allow them to. Bobby Allison wasn't caught up in that self-righteous crap though. He was only here to score wins. With 29 cars in the field, the track was overcrowded and quickly turned into a demolition derby, with a quarter of the field being eliminated by only lap 18. By the end of the race, less than half the field survived. Only 12 cars would officially finish. 3 drivers voluntarily quit the race with clean cars, saying that the race was a clown show and that they wanted out before things got any uglier. As expected, the pony cars dominated this event. Of the top 7 finishers, 5 were pony cars. 2 Mustangs, 2 Camaros, and 1 Javelin. The highest finishing driver with an actual Cup Series car? Richard Petty in second with his Plymouth, at an estimated 3 seconds behind Bobby Allison and his Mustang. Allison only won a measly $1,000 for his efforts, unfortunately the norm for all the short tracks, which had about a tenth of the purse of the super speedways. Not that it would matter because as soon as the race ended, second place finisher Richard Petty protested the win, saying that Allison's car wasn't on an equal playing field, and NASCAR agreed, stripping Allison of his win and that all-important $1,000. Yeah, not one of the King's more sportsmanlike moments. I mean, it's not like Richard won 21 races this season or something. But Allison's win was only partially stripped, as he was given credit for a win in the Grand American Series. Could you even imagine something this egregious happening today? That's like if NASCAR told Austin Dillon after Richmond, okay, you can keep the win, but it's an Xfinity Series win now. Nobody gets the Cup win. People would go absolutely nuts. but I guess an encumbered win is only slightly above an Xfinity win anyway. Under modern day rules, Richard Petty would have gotten the win, and this did lead to a 13-year-long debate where nobody really knew how many wins Richard had. Some claimed that when he won the 1984 Firecracker 400, it was win 201, but official outlets pushed that this was win 200 because, hey, that's a much better story. Also, can you tell that NASCAR record keeping wasn't very good back in the day? But honestly, I do feel bad for Bobby Allison. He was told the rules, he abided by those rules, and he got penalized for playing by those rules. No other pony car driver in the top 10 got their points or money taken away. It was just Bobby Allison. And for Bobby, it's a pretty big deal because this win would have broken a tie in the record book between him and his long-standing rival Darrell Waltrip, who also should have won that Wilkesboro race with a scoring error, so I guess it's still a wash. But yeah, Bobby got hosed. He played by the rules that NASCAR set, and then they changed the rules after the race because one guy complained. And so, that would be how the NASCAR Cup Series era at Bowman Gray came to a close, with a controversial race that ultimately, nobody won. It's almost poetic for it to happen at Bowman Gray of all places. But no, this race was not the reason for Bowman Gray being removed from the schedule. But some of the factors that we talked about beforehand are: first, the prize money on short tracks. It was so little that NASCAR had a tough time convincing teams and sponsors to even attend most of the short track races. A problem that continued for the next 25 years or so, as more and more short tracks like Trenton and North Wilkesboro were removed in favor of bigger tracks that were more lucrative. Secondly, ironically, the introduction of Winston as a title sponsor played a role in axing the Winston-Salem track. With Winston signing on as NASCAR's title sponsor, money and sponsorship became more important than ever before in NASCAR, and they wanted races on bigger tracks that could last longer. So it was decreed that any track smaller than a half-mile in length that couldn't put on shows longer than 250 miles would be axed from the schedule. After all, the more miles you turn, the longer you see those rolling billboards on the racetrack. And so, Bowman Gray, a track in the heart of NASCAR country, one of the sport's first playgrounds, was abandoned by the higher series. But unlike most short tracks that withered and died after NASCAR left, Bowman Gray only became more notorious. Bowman Gray is like that one mutated bacteria in a petri dish that just refuses to die no matter what you throw at it. Because Bowman Gray is chaos incarnate. It's their brand. It's what keeps the track alive. And I know a lot of people see clips on social media most Saturday nights of some bonehead running through the infield and T-boning another car, or doing some other act that would land most people in jail, and they think, how on earth is this circus of a track getting the Clash next year? But we forget, this is how stock car racing started. It was the Wild West, governed by the loosest rules imaginable. Bowman Gray is a time capsule that has been putting on the same primitive form of racing since the 1940s, and people go nuts for it. Is it the WWE on wheels? Yes. Is it Mickey Mouse's all heck? You bet. Is it a single groove racetrack where the only way to pass somebody is to run straight through them? Sure is. And that's why I think race fans should welcome NASCAR back to Bowman Gray. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see racing how it started in the place where it started. The LA Coliseum was a good attempt and replicated that type of racing pretty darn well, but to go back to Winston-Salem, the town that's given so much to NASCAR, to get almost nothing back for the better part of the last 20 years, it's truly a special occasion.
And it's funny that most of the time they ask us about racing at Bowman Gray. Talking to Dale Jr., he said, man, I want to come to your shop one day and hang out. And I think that's because there's a part of them that misses that short track action. Because for us, it's fun.
So with that, if you're still against the Bowman Gray Clash, then I hope this video at least convinced you to give it a fair shot. I think it'll be worth your while. But don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed, subscribe for more videos just like this one, and check out dailydownforce.com for more awesome NASCAR content.